I come to speak about heritage, monumental heritage, cultural heritage, but also scientific heritage, and the beauty that is underlying all of those. That's why kind of an unusual title, Shilpam Science Sundaram. That painting in Ajanta is 1,000 years older than Mona Lisa. This temple, it's a temple called the Nilakanteshvara temple or Udayeshwar temple. It's in a place called Udaipur, not in Rajasthan, but in Madhya Pradesh. And it's the outstanding example of what is called the Bhumija type of the Nagari school of architecture. We are unfamiliar with this, that is my point. We know Western art more than Indian art. Even art of 1,000 years, art of great beauty, art of great classical, structure. We don't even know the names. There are 30 great paintings in Ajanta, 5 very large paintings and 25 small ones. If you go to Paris, this is how you see the Mona Lisa. Right? You buy a ticket in advance, you wait in a queue, you go through security, you have to fly across the continent. Then you, along with 500 people, see the Mona Lisa from 30 feet away. It's the most famous painting, yes, but imagine going to the Madras Museum and touching a painting or seeing a painting like this. There's no competition. The ticket is 15 rupees. You can do it from 2 feet away, and you can touch sculpture, whether it's in Mamallapuram or Ajanta. You can't touch the painting in Ajanta, but you can touch sculpture that's 1,000, 2,000 years older. We are inheritors of an unparalleled heritage that is completely or almost completely missing from our education system. That's just sad. And it's not just understanding art in its depth and its greatness, but talking about abstract art, for example, a deep understanding. You can take joy in the sculpture, right? You see the spout, it's a water spout. That kid cannot resist going underneath and ducking and touching it and taking a selfie, right? And you see in this scene everywhere, right? Kids sitting in the Nandi, right? And it's not just youngsters. A very senior artist, you probably recognize him, Maniyam Selvan, is hugging a pillar in the Thiruvallanchuri temple simply because of the beauty with which the pillar has been sculpted. There's no figure there. There is no Muruga or Ganesha, nothing. It's just the beauty of the sculpture. He's so entranced by it, he wanted a photo of him hugging the, right? And need not be human. Kind recognizes kind. A bull will nuzzle its head against a Nandi. Shouldn't we have the same appreciation of art as the bull has or the cow has? This is one of the caves in Ajanta from which I showed that painting. That painting, by the way, is Shaddanta Jataka. It is a Jataka called Shaddanta Jataka. And this is the largest cave in Ajanta. It was carved from about 200 BC to about 600 AD. The cave was created, and most of the paintings were done. You can see every inch of the wall, every pillar, every inch of the ceiling. Only the floor is left undone. It's covered with paint. The tragedy is not that the average Indian doesn't know it. Most of the artists and art students don't know this art. It was forgotten for 1,000 years. There was art like this all over India. A lot of it was lost to destruction and vandalism. But that's the art. You have seen, think about the technology, the chemistry. Some of the painting is 2,000 years old, some of it is 1,500 years old. How many of you have seen, while you're watching IPL or your favorite movie, some TV serial, news program, an advertisement? Paint your house with the latest brand name paint, industrial technology, 10 years guaranteed. Right? In 2023, the latest industrial technology guarantees 10 years. Your painting will last on your car, or your house, or your school. We have 2,000-year-old paint that is not faded much. What are the engineers missing? Shouldn't engineers and scientists understand this chemistry? The art, not just the art, but the science and the technology. Let's take a different perspective. You are familiar with this particular sculpture. Devika talked about Descent of the Ganga. Here it is. If you see it in 1,000 calendars, right? Shiva standing there, Ganga descending, Bhagirath prays. Ganga falls like a waterfall, and Shiva's entire matted locks bears the weight of the river falling from the sky. This is our mythology. This is our legend. This is our culture, right? But this is a very modern interpretation of this particular story, a modern rendering of this, though it looks traditional. Why do I say that? Look at this one. That's the inspiration. That painting was done about 150 years 50 years back by Raja Ravi Verma, the famous painter of Kerala, who's probably the only Indian painter you can name before the 20th century. And he drew a picture of a tiger skin clad Shiva standing arms akimbo, right, like a wrestler or something, showing all his might. And there comes Ganga like a waterfall over his head, while Parvati watches gently leaning on the bull, and Bhagirath, in reverent thanks, stands across from him. Even that is a modern interpretation. That is not classical art. This is reflected today, this particular rendering is reflected in temples now. The Ravi Verma style of painting, the modern version, you see this, that's a photo from the Vadapani Murugan temple. You see Gangadhara standing, Parvati standing across. It's almost a mimic copy in stucco art. But this is classical art. This is Chola art of Shiva. He is bearing the Ganga. Parvati is standing next to him. See, the Chola artist understood something, and the ancients understood something, and this is how it is there in the original books. In our Puranas, what about the much more familiar one? There is a debate, is it Arjuna's penance? It is Bhagirath's penance. Now it's become very famous. Since our Prime Minister invited the Chinese president to watch it, it's now become the #1 attraction. It's an extraordinarily complicated story, extraordinarily complicated sculpture. I'm not saying we shouldn't study Mona Lisa, that we shouldn't know Western art, European art, Chinese art. But what is our education if we don't know anything about our own heritage, our own science, our own technology? If we can't name the paintings in Ajanta, the most beautiful, most elegant, most classical paintings of India, but we can name 20 different painters of European tradition, something fundamentally wrong with our approach to heritage, our desire to understand heritage, right? And that extends to not just writing and sculpture and architecture, it also extends to inscriptions. This is a scene from the Kailasanatha temple. We saw the Kiratarjunyam earlier. I'm not pointing it for the sculpture here, but for the inscriptions. On the 3 slabs, you have inscriptions. All of them are in Sanskrit. The top slab has an inscription in the Nagari script, which is probably recognizable. The middle slab has in Grantham, Pallava Grantham script. This Pallava Grantham inspired the scripts for most Southeast Asian countries. Most of those countries wrote in Grantham. Even their own languages written. Thai, Burmese, Cambodian, Vietnamese language. All of these languages use this Grantham script to write Sanskrit and then to write their own scripts, but you don't know that. And the bottom one is calligraphic Nagari. Not only do you have the letters, you have it decorated with peacock heads and creepers and lotus leaves and all that to make it much more beautiful. That sense of beauty, isn't that totally missing from our monumental architecture? Do our bridges have sculptures? Do our halls? Do our schools? Do our houses? Do they have paintings? Only the scribbles of our children or calendar art that we stick. Maybe a poster of Virat Kohli. Why? This is kind of gives you an overall perspective of this. It's not just that artists should study art. It's scientists and engineers should study, because there is a lot of, and it's not just the heritage of science in art, it is the heritage of our science and engineering that we don't know. Our liver doctor gave a quote from Hippocrates. Sushruta said the same thing 200 years before Hippocrates. Nobody ever goes Sushruta. He's not in our medical syllabus. The Indians were sterilizing their medical equipment from the days of Sushruta. Europe discovered this 150 years back. And we think all our medicine is Western. Doctors don't know this. Let me give an example from something that's very easily and recognizable. You all know the Harappan civilization. Thousands of cities discovered all over the India, Pakistan, Northwest region. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, several cities. Look at this. This is a brick wall from one Harappan site called Lothal. And you can see that it's a water channel, right? It's a channel for water to pass. And it's made of bricks. Simple. You're familiar with the bricks. They're all rectangular. Series of rectangles assembled one after the other. The way you'd build a wall or a channel. What about this? It's a well in Mohenjo-daro. But it's not using rectangular bricks, which today several wells do. What's the difference? The bricks are all trapezoidal. You see the deep inside here? You assemble trapezia together, you form a well with no gaps where you put rectangles together. You have to have specialized bricks just for the well. You don't use the same bricks that you use in the, it's very basic engineering. Has anybody seen a trapezoidal well, trapezoidal brick? What structures emerges when you put rectangles one next to another? 1, 2, 3, 4. Straight line, a wall, we're familiar with. What happens when you put one trapezium next to another? Right? The Harappan engineer had an insight. We have lost this today. We are building with rectangular bricks. The circular well is not only brilliant because it uses trapezoidal bricks, there is no gap between the bricks. So there is no pressure, there is no danger of the well collapsing inside on itself. It's a stable structure. It's not just geometrically intelligent, it's structurally brilliant. You familiar with this? A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared or H squared. What's this called? You're familiar with this formula? Pythagoras theorem. Excellent. What about the next one? F equal to ma. Force is equal to mass into acceleration. Do you remember who said this? Anybody? Newton's second law, right? E equals mc squared. Albert Einstein, immediate recognition. Einstein's mass energy formula. We studied this in quadratic equations, right? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The root x is 4ac plus b squared minus b, or minus b plus or minus so on by 2a. What is this equation called? Does it have a name or is it anonymous? The roots of the quadratic equation was first given by Brahmagupta, but he didn't invent it or discover it. There were already people who knew it, but he was the first person to formally express it. Aryabhatta actually, who came 100 years before Brahmagupta, uses it without even mentioning it. What about the much more familiar one? Sin x is equal to opposite by hypotenuse. Does that formula have a name? No? What is this mysterious phenomena of anonymous mathematical formula? Is it possible that they have Indian names that you don't learn about? Sine is first mentioned in Surya Siddhanta. Assumed. It's already discovered. We don't know who did it. It's there in Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta. They all assume everybody knows it. They don't even bother introducing it. We don't know who invented it. Definitely not a Westerner. The Indian sign had the word ja. Okay, what is ja? Trigonometry. Sign, you know, what is ja? If you take a circle and you draw a chord, you're familiar with that, right? You take that arc of the circle, That is called chapa or dhanush, which is a Sanskrit word for arc. The bow, that line, the cord looks like a bowstring, doesn't it? The whole thing looks like a bow, the arc and the cord. That bowstring, the Sanskrit word for bowstring is ja, which is used for mathematically cord. That word ja was translated as jab, mispronounced, when it went to Arabia and went to Baghdad in the 9th century. Jab is not a Sanskrit word, it's a mispronunciation, but jab is an Arabic word which means pocket or pouch. Jab, job, job, jobi, you heard that word? Right? That went to Latin, the pouch got translated to sinus, the sinus got truncated to sign in English, and today we learn this sign completely unaware of its Sanskrit origin, of its Indian origin. And we learn about Brahmagupta's formula, and he gave it as a shloka. Varga chaturgunithanam rupanam, varga chaturgunithanam, the coefficient of the square term, rupanam, constant. We learn no mathematical terms in Indian languages. We learn all the alternate names that they have in English and Latin and other languages. And we only think Aryabhatta invented zero. Our most familiar equation, algebra, we don't know this. If the Westerners don't know this, if Pakistan doesn't teach it, China doesn't teach it, that's okay. Why are we not learning this? Or unusually, an American computer company actually proudly advertised the Indian contributions to algebra. Talks about Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, Bhaskara, all these people and how they talks about, and we think mathematics is Western, algebra is Arabic, the numbers are Arabic. We don't know our artistic heritage, we don't know our scientific heritage, we don't know our engineering heritage. We don't know how the Harappans use a brick. There is beauty in this, not just in the science, not just in the sculpture. That's why I titled it Shilpam Science Sundaram. I hope I have provoked your curiosity. I don't know if I have answered any question. I hope I have provoked your curiosity. Go look at what India's heritage is. Not just the adults, but the children and the parents. Not just the teachers, but the students and the parents. Thank you very much.